Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about Excel mastery, 5 charts to enhance healthcare dashboards. My name's Scott Everett. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare Solutions here at Practical Data Solutions, and I'm glad to be joined today by our CEO, Russell Hendrickson, and by Jared Teixeira, report analyst and expert in all things Excel. Welcome, Russell. Welcome, Jared.
Excellent. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for joining us. And Jared and Scott, based on the popularity of the last one, we thought we'd bring you another one of these 5 more charts. So we're going to teach you 5 new charts today. And Jared, I know you've come up with some great examples of things that can enhance visual dashboards.
Very excited to share what we have today. Thank you.
Throughout today's webinar, feel free to ask questions as the webinar goes on, and we'll try to take your questions as we go, or certainly we'll have a more formal Q&A period at the end of this webinar. So please feel free to chat them in using the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Practical Data Solutions, we're focused on healthcare analytics and reporting, and we help organizations from private practices to large health systems and hospitals all across the country. And as you'll see today, we specialize in helping organizations in the 3 key areas, which is operational analytics, clinical analytics, and financial analytics. And so throughout today's teaching how to use Excel and do some more advanced charting, we'll also be highlighting some of the different data sets that we help organizations work with.
Yeah, so one of the big keys in successful healthcare organizations today is becoming more data-driven. And the way to do that is by use of these visual dashboards and analytics that are out there, by giving individuals the ability to interact with the data, to be able to apply filters quickly, and to be able to get a quick and easy view of trends, of issues, outliers, problems, basically allowing people to digest data quickly and be able to act on it immediately. And there's a lot of great technology in the market that allows you to be able to do these things to support your better decisions. And the technology's really evolved to make dashboards very visual and easy to work with.
Yeah, kind of household names like Power BI and Tableau, everybody's really familiar with, but almost all the major analytics vendors from Click to Business Objects to IBM with their Cognos and Watson product, to companies like MicroStrategy and all have great visualization tools. And so, the question really is, why are we talking about Excel? Why Excel after all these great tools and technology that's available today?
Well, Russell, Excel is very popular. I mean, everybody uses it. Everybody knows how to use it. It's pretty easy to learn. And it's been around for a long time. I mean, Excel's been around longer than I've been alive. So, I mean, everybody knows about it. So,
Yeah. And you came right out of college like most young people and kind of already proficient, right? I mean, they teach it. It's sort of you grow up with it right in school. So very,
yes.
very popular. And yet those of us who have been around a little longer than you have, we've been using it pretty much, in business regularly. So very popular, easy to use, very affordable, right? So what we're going to talk about today is not just about charting, but what's the value of doing this? Why are we trying to communicate? In this case, our first example, we're going to talk about communicating to providers around quality metrics. So why are we trying to do that? What's important about that?
So again, we want to be able to be visual in this, and we want to be able to give our providers dashboards that illustrate their performance, show how well they're doing in certain areas, and be able to self-manage based upon the data that they're seeing.
Yeah. And so, we're going to touch base and we'll actually talk about the dashboard that we built. But if we kind of hone in here, what we're going to be talking about today is the combo bar chart, which is kind of exciting and, really makes it easy to assess benchmarks, interpret our performance. And in this case, the black dot is the physician performance and the blue dot or the blue diamond here is the division or department performance. And so it makes it very easy to understand how we're performing compared to our peers, and how we're performing against sort of best practice or quality metrics, as you'll see in just a minute. So with that, Jared, let's turn off the cameras here and let's cut over. And if you would walk us through how to build the combo bar chart.
Yeah, so this is what your chart should look like when you're finished. We're going to go to our data sheet, and then we have our 2 scores, the individual score and the practice score, and then we have our benchmarks down at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our benchmarks to create the first part of our chart. So we're going to go to Insert, Charts, Bar Chart, and then we want it to be a stacked bar. And then we're going to click on this second one where you can see all the values are stacked on top of each other. Okay, so then from here we got to add the scores. So what we're going to do is we're going to select data. We're going to add new series name. We could do an individual score. And the value, we're going to select the value here, hit OK. Then we're going to do this again, but this time it's going to be for the practice score. Okay, then we have to change the chart type. We're going to make it a combo chart. Then we're going to make sure the benchmarks are set as a stacked bar. And then the individual and practice score we want to set to a scatter. And then hit OK. Then we go back, we're going to select data again. Then since we changed the individual and practice score to a scatter, we have to edit. And then we're going to change the value we selected. So the value we selected, we're going to change it to the X value instead. And then the Y value, we're going to make it 0.5. And then we're going to do the same thing for the practice score. We're going to edit. The X value will be the value, and then the Y value we're going to set to 0.5. And OK. So now from here, this Y axis we have, we can format this, and we're going to hard code this axis to go from 0 to 1. That way our dots go in the center of this bar chart here. Then the next step, we're going to take both of our x-axis and we're going to hard code these to go from 0 to 1. So we're going from 0 to 100%. And the same thing for this one, 0 to 1. And then that way you can see both of our dots are now inside the bar on our benchmarks here. So then for our dots, we're going to click this one. This one is our individual score. So we're going to format the data series. And then for our individual score for this chart, we're going to make the marker, we're going to set it as a diamond. Then we're going to increase the size so that it goes across the whole bar. And then for this chart, we're going to change the color. For the individual score, we're going to make it a black diamond. So the border and fill, we're going to set to black. Then for our practice score, we're going to make it another diamond. We're going to increase the size, but this one's going to be a little bit smaller. And in this color, we're going to set it to a blue. And since we're measuring the values against the benchmarks, it's important to have different colors for these benchmarks to show the importance of this chart. So then for the poor benchmark, we would just set this for this chart to the dark red color. And then we would change the colors for the other bars. So the rest of this chart is just removing the unnecessary parts and formatting the axis and adding a title if you'd like. And then after the formatting, this is what your final chart should look like.
Thanks, Jared. That was great. So let's just quickly to review creating the combo bar chart. We want to make sure we've got our data sheets separated from our charts, and that's really best practice. So our dashboard and our data are on two different pages. We're going to insert the stack bar chart with the benchmark categories. We're going to then add the scores. And in doing so, that also allows us to position the diamonds and make a size for them. And then, of course, most of the rest of this is formatting the chart with colors, labels, and grid markers to make it easy to understand. So let's take a look at the finished dashboard that puts together all these charts. Scott, why is this useful? How does this help us? What are we really trying to accomplish here with this data?
Well, this is really a great dashboard when we're looking at a quality metrics that we're measuring by provider. And what we want to show is how well is the provider performing in terms of achieving these quality goals and compare them to peers in their organization, in their division, in their specialty, things like that. And what this does is it gives a very quick and easy look at areas where the provider is really performing excellent. Diabetes A1C, good control, BMI screening and follow-up, great control. Providers performing excellently and sometimes much greater than the rest of their department or division. Other places, the provider is not quite at that highest level, yet still looks like they're outperforming the department or division internally in most places, including especially when it comes to pneumococcal vaccination for older adults, where the provider is actually doing okay, but the department or division is really struggling in that area. And so this is something that can be utilized by both the provider as well as by division or department leadership to help illustrate successes and show what are levels that can be achieved by other providers in the department or division.
Yeah, and two things that jump out, obviously, also having those red, yellow, green indicators, you can see right away the physician not doing as many maybe flu shots as they could be doing. The second thing that I really like about this dashboard is over on the right, you can see how many patients actually were measured or received the best practice quality metric, which really points to some performance and quality potential opportunities for either growing revenue or improving quality of care. So, in an internal medicine group, this might be something that we give to the physician, but then of course we could also take and build on some of these same metrics and summarize them for the practice or summarize them for the division. And so what you're looking at here then is we're looking across the group and we're understanding on those same sets of metrics, how are we performing as a team? And even potentially then how are we performing, how are the individuals performing against each other or against what we hope are achieving our quality goals so we can get that extra incentives that are available.
Yeah, so one of the things I like about this is, really highlighting a couple of key metrics that go along with the quality. So first of all, you have the would recommend group, where patient experience and patient satisfaction scores are really critical. And we put those in most dashboards because patient experience is what really needs to drive our practice. In addition to that, we can look at, one key quality metric that maybe we're very focused on diabetes, or maybe we're very focused on hypertension or on obesity management, things like that. We can put a key metric down at the bottom that's highlighted and show where we are, but also benchmark against where we were a year ago. Even if we're not performing where we want to be yet, are we doing better than we have been, and are we at least trending in the right direction?
Yeah, and Jared, I know you put this dashboard together. What jumps out at you? What do you like on the page here?
Yeah, Russell, I really like that bottom chart because when we're looking at all the providers in the department, we're only highlighting the ones that fall below that target line to really show the ones that are, that could improve.
Yeah, and I think that's great, especially if we have a large department. As you can see, there's probably 20 physicians here. Trying to put all the names on the screen, at least it again sort of shedding light where we may have some potential to improve. So I do love that. And then even, there was something to be said for designing dashboards that are colorful, use a sort of a standard or a common color palette. And then making sure things that are lined up really make the difference when you're trying to communicate it. It really shows that you're not only getting the data right, but the presentation is just as important. And we actually have another video up on our YouTube channel that if you wanted to watch, where we talk about how to improve your dashboard designs. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar. Okay. So with that, let's move on to the next chart and let's talk about the value of benchmarking physician utilization and capacity.
Yeah, one of the big sets of dashboards that we like to create. We like to call our performance potential dashboards, where what we're looking at is what would happen if we were able to get providers to meet a benchmark level or just even the average within the department or division in which they operate. If we could get those providers who are below average to move up to average, and the ones who are at average to move up to the highest performing levels, what's the potential return that we could get in terms of number of visits, increased revenue, increased cash flow? This is one where I think this dumbbell chart that we're looking at can definitely really help us visualize what is our true potential and how can we start getting there by looking at outliers.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about and understand those two charts on the right, which is the visit potential and the revenue potential of improving clinic visits and performance in clinic visits. So, the dumbbell chart, just really helpful. It really shows us the range of potential opportunity. And then it also shows us we've added that sort of the median opportunity in the little red hash mark there, and makes it easy to sort of then stratify where we see the physicians with the greatest opportunity, which is really what we're trying to do. How can we improve performance and find the potential to improve the performance easily? So with that, let's, Jared, why don't you walk us through the key steps to understanding and building out the dumbbell chart?
So this is our finished dumbbell chart, and this is actually sorted, but when we're building it, we're actually going to build it unsorted at first, and it's going to end up looking like this. So this is the data that we're going to work with for this chart.
The first metric that we have to work with is total clinic visits, and this is the total visits that the physician is seeing as well as the total for the department. And at the bottom, you can see we're also creating an average. Then in the next column, what we're going to do is we're going to group the number of visits into 4-hour blocks. So we're actually coming up with the number of visits per clinic session, which is a 4-hour block or 4-hour time grouping. And then that allows us then to figure out what is column D, which is the average clinic visits per session per physician, and compare that to the department. And then the last column is how many minutes are being spent with the patient or in our visits per session. So that gives us total minutes per session, which then allows us to calculate down to the average minutes per visit based on the number of sessions being done. So that's a data set that we're going to be working with today for this chart. Then what we're doing is we're going to calculate some of the different metrics where we see the performance opportunity here, or the opportunity gain. So if the average number of clinic sessions is less than the department average for each provider, then we're going to calculate what the potential opportunity is for gains in clinic sessions compared to the average of the department. In the next column, we're going to say, what if just everybody increased by 5% on their total clinic visits? So we can calculate what that increase would be across the board. And you can see everybody could potentially do 5% more. So that's what we have here. The next column, this is, I think, one of the more valuable columns when we're looking at performance gaps, is we're going to calculate the average clinic visits per session compared to, or if we can move that physician to the department average. So this is, to me, is one of the key metrics where we might see significant gains because the physicians are seeing less than the 10.3 average clinic visits per session. We also then are looking in column J at the total number of minutes that we might be able to increase per session compared to the department averages, and then the opportunity at the department minutes per visit that we could increase.
And then we're going to add some more calculations on top of that. And these calculations are where we're going to use to actually build the chart. So in column M, we're creating a formula that just pulls the last name of the providers just to make it a little bit cleaner on the final chart. In column N, we're using a formula to get the highest potential opportunity in columns G through K. In column O, we're doing a similar formula, but instead of the highest, we're looking for the lowest potential opportunity in the same columns G through K. In column P, we're taking the difference between the highest and lowest. Then in column Q, we're taking the same columns G through K and finding the median. Column R, we're hard coding the red line on the final chart to be 50. That's just the size of the line. In column S, we're creating a formula to get the remainder. So what this is doing is taking the median for each provider and then taking the median and adding on whatever it takes to get to the highest potential opportunity for the provider. So that way, when we create our chart, we don't have to hard code the axis. Okay, so then to build the chart, we're gonna take our lowest potential opportunity and then the difference from highest to lowest. We're gonna highlight these columns. We're gonna insert, go to charts, and we want to take a stacked bar chart, the first one that looks like this. Okay, so then from here, we're going to add error bars. We could just do the standard error bar for this. And then these error bars are what we're going to use to create the little circles at the end that create the dumbbell chart look. So then first one, we're going to click the error bar on the right side. We're going to format it. And for this one, we're going to make it, instead of both, to be plus. We're going to do no cap. And then we're going to do a fixed value to 0.1. So that way it's just at the end of the bar. And then we're going to change the arrow type to a circle. And then we can increase the width. And then we're going to format the error bars at the other side of the chart. And we're going to do something similar. This one is going to be minus, no cap, fixed value at 0.1. And then the arrow type can be a circle, and then just increase the size.
So Jared, I know we're using error bars, and up until you showing me this example, I wasn't quite sure why the error bar works, but because it's based on standard deviation, if we've set it all the way at the end of the error, if you will, that top 1%, it works effectively to get us that round circle at the end of each side of the bar.
So in the next step, we have to take this blue bar, which was our lowest potential opportunity, and we're just going to make this no fill so it's hidden. And then now we're going to add our median lines on this. So we're going to right click the chart, select data. We're going to add a series. We can name this series the median potential opportunity. Highlight our values. Hit OK. Add another series. This one is our line size. Highlight our values. And we do one more, and this one's going to be the remainder. And then hit OK. Then we have to change the chart type. We want to go to combo. We want to make sure all of these are a stacked bar. And then we want to put all of the median values that we just added are going to go on a secondary axis. Hit OK. So now this green, the first median potential opportunity series, we're going to change to no fill. And then the blue one at the end, the remainder, we're going to change to no fill. And then this small purple section, that's our line. So we're going to right click that, we're going to format it, and we're going to make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. So then we have our median line inside the bars for each of the providers. So then what we have to do now is we can select data. We have to do our horizontal axis. We're just going to edit, and then we're going to click the provider names here, hit OK. And then, so that way we have the first provider at the top. We have to right click the axis, format it, and we want to check the categories in reverse order. But then if we do that, our median series on the second axis is going to be off, so we have to add our secondary vertical axis, format that one, check the same box, and then we could get rid of that secondary axis.
So, Jared, just a couple of key steps that you went through here. So, I saw you hiding quite a few of those, the remainder of the median. That's really for keeping the axis in alignment because we have two axes. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. So what we're doing is, so with the red bars, it goes all the way up to 3,500 at the highest value here. And if we don't add that remainder, the secondary axis will be somewhere around the highest median value, which is somewhere around 1,700. So if we add that remainder, it makes the secondary axis equal to the first axis, and that way you don't have to hard code it.
And so that's because Excel wants to auto scale the axis based on the values in the chart, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that solves that. Okay. And then I like what you did with the median here because now we can start to see where is the median that you'd expect for performance opportunity. And so you can see on some of the bars, right, the physicians like Robertson and Frazier, the median is in the middle. So they probably have the greatest opportunity across different performance improvements. Where, for example, in the first or the second, not so much in the first, I guess, but in the second chart or even in Brookfield or Belcher there, the median is much lower. So we would expect, very little chance of performance opportunity.
So in the last steps for this chart, we're just gonna edit our axis, change some of the colors, add a title, and do our final formatting. And then this is what your final chart should look like.
And, obviously a little by switching to yellow, setting the median to red, now you can really see where that median line is. So I really like how that pops out. You've eliminated the other axis, so it's much cleaner. You can see that. And then of course those hidden calculations make it so that if you refresh your data set, the chart will scale automatically. So a lot of good things going on here. But Jared, what if I want to go a little further and now rank or sort them by opportunity?
Yeah, we could do that with this chart. So to do that, you're gonna have to create another formula that ranks each provider based on the difference from highest to lowest opportunity. You'll see it goes from 1 to 13. And then to do that, you then have to do a VLOOKUP that will sort all of the data here into rows starting from 1 to 13. And then you would use that data to create the chart in the same steps that we did. And then when you sort it, the chart will look like this. We're not going to teach how to do VLOOKUP in this webinar, but if you're trying to use it for your dashboards and you need help, please let us know.
So as you can see, to summarize the steps for creating the dumbbell chart, we're going to obviously set up the different data sheets that we have. We're then going to build out the stacked bar chart, set the bar color. Then we're going to add those error bars at the ends so that we get both ends of the dumbbell chart. Then we're going to move the secondary axis to set up where the median line needs to sit. And then, of course, we'll finalize the chart by formatting the axes, removing the legends, etc., and setting the chart title so that we get the chart that we want. So, Scott, if you would please walk us through what's the value of this information and how does this chart fit into the whole dashboard?
Yeah, so again, the visual component that we're looking at here is something that allows us to highlight immediately outliers, and that's what we really want to look at. So if you look at who are the providers who are performing at below average. If you look at that first chart in the upper left-hand corner, you can see providers who are below the average of the department or division, and you can see even in that chart where there is additional capacity for them. So in this place for clinic access, we can see providers that may have additional capacity to get patients in faster, to see more patients, and a lot of times these providers don't even know that they're performing at this level. And so these are ones that we can highlight, work with the providers individually who provide the greatest opportunity for improvement. And if we do that, we're basically doing 20% of the work that's going to get us 80% of the return to help really improve clinic access, improve the bottom line revenue.
Yeah, and what I love about this dashboard, Scott, is that we actually used to have two dashboards. One that was more operational. How many more patients can we see, right? Increased visits, which is now the top half of this dashboard. And then on the other side, if we're talking more with finance or trying to talk about the revenue to the practice, right? So we've split this to the bottom half of the dashboard is actually quantifying just not how many patients in the top, but what's the impact, potential impact on the revenue. So I do love how that sort of separates out, makes it easy to communicate.
And with this dashboard, Russell, I really like how all the charts are sorted, like we talked about when we created the chart. So it really makes you can see where each provider is really falling in each metric here.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it very easy to see the highest potential and the lowest potential, and where those physicians are that potentially, we want to shed light and say, how can we improve, right? It doesn't mean the physician's doing a bad job. It means there's an area for potential improvement, and that's, ultimately what we're trying to do is shed light, right? All right. So before we get into number three, our tree map chart, let's talk about the value of dashboarding expense versus budget data. Scott, why is this dashboard useful to a medical group, and what are we trying to communicate here?
Yeah, well, as you know, we're starting to face cuts in reimbursement that are coming from Medicare and CMS as we're looking at ways to tighten cost controls and things like that. We really need to understand what are our costs, what are the costs that it takes to deliver care within our practice. And so being able to benchmark that, being able to utilize that and communicate that out really is key to maintaining profitability and financial stewardship.
And so, when we look at this dashboard and the sort of automation there is kind of quick, and let me run it again. We had the dashboard here with the pie chart, and Jared, I think I'd come to you and I said, could we improve on that? I wasn't, looking for a way to say, what could we teach, what could we show that might be of use, and you came back and said, let's try the tree map.
Yeah, and the tree map it's showing the same data, so nothing's changed, but it's just a different visual to use instead of the pie chart.
Yeah, and so we've actually taken one of our dashboards, we've replaced it with a tree map, which is what we're going to show you how to build. But I found this kind of helpful, and it really is a preference because what's interesting is as we looked at this back and forth with different healthcare experts here at PDS, some people said they like the pie chart better, some people like the tree map better. What we're going to do though is teach you how to use the tree map, and if nothing else, I mean, it certainly allows you to see your contributors, understand the allocation, and sort of spot different trends. But if nothing else, it gives you an alternative to just having pie charts on your dashboards. So even just for some variety or getting people to maybe look a little closer. The other thing that we're going to teach you how to do is how to build in the slicers, which is really kind of fun and exciting because that can add some interaction to your dashboards and make it easier for organizations when they're looking at data to have something akin to visual analytics, but we're still staying in the world of Excel. Okay. So with that, let's jump right in. Jared, walk us through how to build the tree map, and then of course, then we'll touch base and we'll talk about the slicers.
Yeah, so this is our final tree map chart. And then if we have our expense data here, and then we're going to add a total formula at the end, and then another row that creates the percentage for each expense. So then to create a pie chart and a tree map, you just have to highlight the percentages here, highlight our labels, go to charts, pie chart, hit OK. And then if you repeat the same thing, and then if you highlight it again, go back to charts, and go to tree map, and hit OK. You'll have a pie chart and a tree map.
Okay, so you can see, the pie chart versus the tree map. Jared, can you go ahead and just adjust the labels so we see a little more chart, a little less of label? And so, a couple things you might notice, what I notice right out, what jumps out at me is in the tree map, it's almost easier to see those salary and benefits. They jump out. The labels are right in the boxes, and you get a better feel, in my opinion, for those smaller expenses, what a small percentage they are compared to the salary and benefits. You could say, hey, I can see the same thing in the pie chart. Two different representations. I kind of like them in the tree map that they're more boxed. And it's just a little easier to get a feel for how small of a percentage they are compared to the whole area that I don't quite get off the pie chart. Both are good charts. People are used to seeing pie charts, don't see as many tree maps. But let's go ahead and finish it. How would this then look back in our finished dashboard?
And here's the final chart with the final formatting and color changes.
Yep. So that's great. And I really like this representation, Jared. Now, if you remember in our original dashboard, we also had these things called slicers. Can you explain that? And then also teach everybody how to go about building that.
Yeah, so this is just a slicer that if you click on the buttons, it will change a chart based on the values for, in this example, each department. So to create that, we need a pivot table. So to create a pivot table, here's going to go to Insert, Pivot Table, and for the range, we can go to our data sheet, and then we can just highlight all of our data for this and hit OK. Okay, and then for the fields that we're going to use, we're going to do year-to-date, salaries and benefits, billing space and overhead, and the same ones that you see on the top. And then we're going to check division, so our data is by department. Now, when you're using a pivot table, you also want to go into pivot table options and make sure in data that this refresh data when opening file is checked. Hit OK. Now, to create a slicer, you just click on the pivot table, go to Insert, Slicer, and you check Division, hit OK, and you'll get your slicer here. Now, to create a tree map that works with the slicer, in Excel, you cannot create a tree map based off of a pivot table. So what we have to do is we have to create another sheet that is using a formula that just pulls the data off of the pivot table onto another sheet. And then if you follow the same steps we did before, adding a total, adding a percentage, and you highlight here, insert tree map, okay. Then you'll have a chart that will work with the slicer. So now we have the slicer and the chart. So you see if I click on the different departments, our tree map will change based on which department we click. So to summarize, when we're using the slicers, we have our data sheet, and then we're creating another sheet that's using a pivot table, and that's how we're going to create the slicer. But then to create the chart, we have to make another sheet mapping that data off the pivot table, and then that's the sheet that we're going to use to create the actual chart.
That was great, Jared. Very exciting. I love how those slicers work. Just, again, to quickly summarize, you'll set up your different sheets. In this case, we are using a pivot table to make the slicers work, right? We're going to calculate the pivot values and then clean up our percentages and totals. That'll make then the slicer ability to be formatted against the division so we can work back and forth. We'll add the tree map, and then, really the rest of it is finalizing and kind of cleaning things up. We're also using the explain and the analyze. So if you do have more data sheets you want to link to, or if you just want to provide more context to how they can see the dashboard, that is helpful in that explain as well. So again, let's now look at the data. Scott, what is this telling us? How is this helpful? Let's go back to what's the value of this data with the tree map, but as a dashboard as a whole.
Yeah, so this one again highlights immediately our outliers or our largest areas that we're looking at. So we can see very quickly our largest expenses are salaries and budget and then office space. And so looking at those areas to understand this is where most of our outflow of our cash is going. And we can start looking at it that way. We can also look at, what's our revenue streams that we're seeing that are coming through. How are we comparing to what we budgeted? If we're doing better in revenue, we may have to see an uptick in expenses because it simply means more volume that's there. That's fine. We just want to make sure that those are being matched as we go along.
Yeah, and for organizations in particular that spend a lot of time forecasting where they're going to be at year end, understanding performance against budget, just key. Jared, anything that you like to highlight on this dashboard as you were the one who put it together and sort of revised it?
I really like the slicer on this dashboard. I mean, when you click on it, all the charts will change, and I think it's a feature in Excel that not a lot of people know about that I think is very useful.
Yeah, and really makes it easy to deliver not just one dashboard then, but multiple perspectives of the data. Yeah, really helpful. And we're going to use that in the next chart as well that we're going to talk about. So with that, let's now talk about visualizing variances in patient clinic cycle times.
Hey, Russell, cycle times is one of the newer things that a lot of health organizations are looking at right now. It's basically time spent waiting in various areas in the clinic. And it's something that people are really interested in because it's a huge patient satisfaction issue. It's a patient experience driver, but it also can help highlight areas of potential capacity in patient access. And so looking at the times these patients are spending within our clinic can really provide some insight and some additional metrics to utilize to help us improve our patient access and patient experience.
Yeah, and so what we're going to talk about is the box and whisker chart, and then we're also going to bring in the slicers. And what I sort of got very excited about with the box and whisker chart when we first started putting this webinar together, was that it's designed to allow you to understand distribution of data, really understand outliers and anomalies, right? And so we thought, well, this would be a great data set to sort of look at those clinic cycle times, especially where we have long cycle times. So with that, now we're going to guide you through how to build the box and whisker chart.
Yeah, so this is the finished box and whisker chart. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our data sheet.
And so the data that we're working to build in the box and whisker chart, obviously, is we can see our fictitious patients here. We can see their date of appointment. We've then converted that into what day of the week it is. So we can stratify into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You'll see their appointment time. But the main thing that we're really looking at is both, the providers, the type of visit, and then ultimately that column K, that total appointment time, which is tracking from the time of check-in to the time of checkout. So we're really looking at their total time in clinic. And that's what we're going to build our chart on, is to try to measure time in clinic by day, by location, to look for variances where we may have patients in the clinic a long time or a short amount of time. So go ahead, walk us through that, Jared.
So to create the chart, we really only need two columns, the day of the week and the total appointment time. So we're gonna highlight our days of the week. And then once we get all of those, we're also gonna highlight the total appointment time. Okay, and once we have that highlighted, we're gonna go to Insert, Chart, and we're gonna go to Box and Whisker and hit OK. And once we have our chart, you can format the data series and decide if you want to show the outlier points or hide them. And then let's do our final formatting. You change the colors and add a title, and then we'll end up with our final chart here.
So as you can see, creating the box and whisker chart, sort of really not very complicated. Select the data, highlight the day of the week and the time, insert the box and whisker chart. You really just have to modify those cell references if needed, especially decide if you want to see the outliers as dots or not, and then just format up your chart and your colors. And then, of course, as we add the slicers, as you saw, that now makes our chart more interactive and brings that value to it as well.
Yeah, and this is really a good area to illustrate, again, what are the various times our patients spend waiting in certain areas within the clinic? How much time is it taking to get back to a room? How much time are they spending with the person taking their vitals and doing their medical history? How much time is with the provider themselves? And then, of course, how long is basically the entire clinic experience taking for our patients? We need to understand this because we need to compare it to the provider templates. We need to compare it to what the patients are expecting, and making sure that we're not being incredibly over or under the amount of our patients expect our providers to be spending with them.
Yeah, and so you can see in the dashboard some of those additional cycle times that you would want to be checking. As you can see with the box and whisker dashboard, we've added additional metrics that you really would want to be checking if you have them available in your EHR, which would be things like check-in time to room time to nurse time to when the physician, arrived, and then how much time they spent with the physician, which gets us to our total visit time. Okay. But we ran into some challenges here, Jared, as I kept challenging you to saying, can we put more marks on the data? Can we somehow add more benchmarking? Can we do more with box and whisker chart? And what we kind of found, as you pointed out to me, Jared, was it's kind of limited. It almost seems like Excel put this in and then kind of just stopped. Microsoft said, yeah, we're not really sure what to do with it. I don't know. It seemed a little limited to me, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, other than the outlier points, there's not really much that you could do other than this in Excel with the box and whisker chart.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly we'd seen, very common used with the stock market and looking at stock price ranges over certain periods of time. So we said, well, what could we do differently? And so we started searching a little more, and we decided we were going to talk about the jitter chart using the exact same data set. And so the real value of the jitter chart is very similar to box and whisker. We can sort of see where the main focus or concentration of patients are with their cycle times, but we can also start to see the outliers. But what's kind of fun about the jitter chart, and I wasn't familiar with this until we had looked at it, was it does really give you that same kind of focus. And when you compare the jitter chart to the box and whisker, I actually found it made the box and whisker look a little better to me than, because I was a little disappointed with what we'd gotten out of it. But with that, let's, using the same data set, Jared, walk us through how to build the jitter chart, because I'm just fascinated by what this can do and the different ways that we can apply it to healthcare data to make it more communicative.
So this is our final jitter chart. So to create this, we're going to use the same data, but we're going to add some additional columns to this. So for this one, we're just adding a appointment column where you're giving each row its individual value, because you'll have some patients that have multiple appointments with the same doctor. So you want to make sure each row has its own value. Then to create the chart, it's a scatter plot. So we need a X value and a Y value. So our total appointment time will end up being on the Y-axis. But to create the X value, we're going to use a formula that is creating a random value for each day. So if you look at our formula, Monday, if the row is Monday, it's going to create a random value between these two values. If it's Tuesday, it's going to create a random value between these two. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's going to do the same. And then we brought that down for all the rows.
And so, Jared, just let me interrupt you here. The random value that you're creating is within that range by day. So you still can separate the columns Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Each one's going to be separated.
Okay. So, for example, that's why Friday is between 0.86 and 0.94, where Monday is 0.14 and 0.06, right? So that's going to give you the spread of the day of the week in the chart.
Yes.
Excellent.
So when you're using a random formula, you don't want to create your chart based off of this column here. So what you could do is you could just highlight your data in the formula and then paste the value in another column here. So in this column, you can see we have our random X value numbers, but this is just a value, not a formula. If you use the random formula, anytime you edit the sheet, it's going to change the value and it will make your chart change each time. And since we're creating this chart with a slicer, we have to create a pivot table just like the other chart that we already created. So for this pivot table, again, we want to make sure in pivot table options that refresh data when opening file is checked. And then for this, we're using that appointment column here, so that way all the rows get put in this pivot table, and we're going by day of the week, and we're adding the X value and the total appointment time. So you'll see that we have Monday. This will be our X value and our Y value. And if we scroll down, we'll have Tuesday and go through all the other days of the week. But to create a scatter plot, just like the other chart, you can't create it off of a pivot table. So we have to pull these values off of the pivot table, which is what we did over here. So we're just creating a formula that's filtering all the rows in this column that are numbers, and it's pulling it over here. So for these two, this would be Monday's values, Tuesday's values, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday over here. So to start to create the chart, we're going to highlight these first two for Monday. We're going to insert and go to scatter. Then since you can see this is sideways, we have to reverse the data. So if we edit this, you'll see that the X value should be this column. So we could change this and just change the other one. The Y value should be our total appointment time, and hit OK. And then if we want to add another one, we can select data, add series. This one would be Tuesday. We have our X values. And our Y values. Hit OK. So then from here, you can start to see the jitter chart. And then after we add all the days of the week, this will be the chart. As you see, we changed the colors a little bit. So what we did was in the data series, in the markers, we have the color set and we change the transparency to 75%. So that way if the dots are overlapping, it creates a darker shade of that same color in the chart.
Yeah, and I think that shading transparency really gives you a feel for where you have the most patients checking out or where the bulk of your cycle time is, right? And then, of course, this can also be finished into the same dashboard style with some of those other data points that we didn't talk to in this session, but certainly add more value. So just before we leave the jitter chart, we actually have one more advanced jitter chart that Jared, you were able to build out kind of last minute that we're not going to explain how to do, but Jared, would you explain what exactly it is that you're showing? How is this jitter a little different than the other one that we just showed?
Yeah, so it's using a different formula. So instead of just jittering vertically with the cycle time here, it's also jittering left to right on the time of day when the appointment is. So on the left side, we have morning appointments, and as you go to the right for each day, it gets later in the day. So the right side is, nighttime appointments.
Yeah, and so what I like about this is you sort of have that double cluster that we can see very heavy. The Monday AM appointments are lasting a really long time, probably some spillover from patients calling in after the weekend. And even you can see Friday and Friday afternoon, we have quite a cluster of patients coming in there. So just a sort of another way to represent the jitter. It's another way to build out, and it uses a different set of formulas that we're not going to show today, but just thought we'd share that with you.
And if you're a PDS client using PDS Dash, there are some considerations in how you build a jitter chart, as long as some with the other charts that we did today. So we'll be having some workshops coming up to show how to build these charts in more detail.
So just to summarize, when you create the jitter chart, right, you're going to set up your sheets. We're going to generate the X values. We'll then create the pivot table so we can filter on it through. We'll pull the plot data in, and then of course, much of the rest is formatting the transparency and the marker sizes so you get that effect of where we see big concentrations. But to me, what's neat about the jitter chart, what makes it stand out is how do you create the jitter? Jared, I know you just explained that to everybody, but could you give us just a quick summary of the key steps to calculating those jitter points?
Yeah, this is really the most important part of this chart. So really the main steps is you want to find out where on the axis you want to use it. So in that chart we did 0 to 1. You want to find out how many series you're going to use. So we did 5 for 5 days a week, and then you really want to make sure that each range that you're using for each series is equal, and then the distance between each one is equal. So when you make that formula, it'll make sure that each of the jitter ranges that almost look like bars are the same width and separated an equal amount throughout the chart.
Yep. And this might be something if you're not quite following it, feel free to reach out to us if you need a little assistance here. It really does depend if we've got 5 series, like you said, 5 days of the week, whether 3 series or 6 series. So it's really just deciding how you're going to space your jitter, right? That's the key, Jared. And then doing the math to get it to jitter within the range that you want that chart to jitter. So
Yes.
what's kind of neat, we'll show it to you again here, but here's, just a picture of the jitter chart, but now you can also, again, see the main concentrations and sort of those color bands that come through. What I think is kind of neat is if we compare it back to the box and whisker, to me, it makes the box and whisker a little easier to follow, right? Because now you can see again in those ranges where we have more concentration. But I like how the jitter chart sort of explains that data set. And I think it's just fascinating and certainly something that you may want to consider or try working with. Again, another way to sort of dress up your dashboards, especially if you've got, more granular data, in this case, the cycle time data we're working with.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me on this one, Russell, is again, you see those same distributions that you saw in the box and whisker, but what we're seeing here is, all of the other stuff we've been working with has been summary level data. This is detail level data that we're working with that's in there. And so we can actually go in and, look at individual points that we want to show us that same, detail level within kind of a summary looking chart. So it's really kind of the best of both worlds that are out there.
Yeah. And then, the other thing too, Scott, that if this was real data, tells me that is on Monday, patients are spending a lot of time in clinic, right? Now, it may be because we've got a lot of extra appointments or, last minute add-ins that occur Monday morning after a long weekend. But, potentially maybe we can try to, schedule or move some of the routine visits that we're doing on Mondays, maybe to Thursdays, right? Just based on what we're seeing. It might smooth out our days. So, yeah. Excellent. Okay. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of Excel, because we started talking about visual analytics, and then we started talking about, how everybody knows Excel. It's easy to use. It's quick. It certainly, there's a lot of different ways to build charts. We've just shown you 5 different ways to do things, and it's, very common because you can almost customize it any way you want and do kinds of things.
Yeah, so some of the cons to working with Excel is that it's not as interactive as you get with some of these other analytical tools that are out there in the industry, and you don't necessarily have the drill down and drill through capabilities that you have to be able to do it. You don't necessarily have the level to play with the data to do quick and easy analysis that's out there. And again, if you're working with multiple people in collaboration, it's kind of funny because everybody does Excel a little bit differently. And so if you're trying to navigate through what's this other person doing or how are they trying, it can get a little bit complicated. So that collaboration piece can be a downside to using Excel for this as well.
Yeah, and I've got to touch on scalability because that's probably the biggest thing when organizations approach PDS. They'll say, we can't even open the file, or we're sort of pushing the limits. It takes 15 minutes to try to make updates, right? So we end up with these very large Excel files that really need to be moved to databases. So these are some of the challenges. So we've got a little bit of fun here with our graphic designer, but we designed the perfect dashboard. We've added those great charts, right? But what happens because of some of the limitations of Excel?
Yeah, so when you have the dashboard and you start adding more data into it, the formulas can get really complicated. Like you said, it could slow down the file. And even if you want to, burst out that dashboard to different departments, providers, it could get really difficult to do that. And it gets very manual.
Yeah, and so that's what we like to call sort of that Excel monster, where suddenly, your beautiful dashboard gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It gets a little bloated, and as you keep adding or joining data sets, right? It gets much harder to manage. And so we kind of joke around here, but we've added our sort of superhero, which is this Captain Accelerator. And we have a product here at PDS called PDS Dash that can help make Excel much simpler. And really, the keys to this product is that it will refresh the data by pasting it in. It'll allow you to burst out dashboards so that you can have them by department, physician, location. It makes it much easier to join data. And then when you want to distribute data, it's actually set up where it's copying the data instead of having to distribute the whole sheet or even have links. So it's one way that many clients all over the country are using to make Dash much more valuable.
Yeah, one of the things I think that helps with this, if you're doing a lot of copying and pasting, if you're doing a lot of manual work to try to burst these out, it can get time consuming, it can get difficult, it can be error prone. You copy paste into the wrong cell, you copy the wrong provider's data into another provider's dashboard. Dash takes care of all of that and reduces that error potential and manual work by a considerable amount.
Yeah. So certainly if you do a lot of work with Excel, might be something you want to learn more about. We'd love to talk to you about what PDS Dash can do and how it could simplify, certainly cut down the time, as well as allow you to make much more quality looking dashboards. One of the other products that we also have that is very useful if you're doing a lot of work in Excel, but you need a way to distribute reports. Maybe you have 30 physicians and you want to just click a button. This is our superhero's little sidekick. We call them Distro. And he's distributing dashboards. I know it's a little bit hokey, but it's kind of fun. And so we have a tool that can help you do that as well. And then, Jared, if you would, can you talk to us about the PDS dashboard library, which is where we've been seeing a lot of these great examples of dashboards and put together?
Yeah, our dashboard library, we have tons of different examples of different dashboards you use, different data sets, and different chart types in there that you could look at.
So, Jared, on the budget and expense dashboard that we were showing everybody how to build out the tree map, I came back to you and I said, if we have the data already sorted, is there any way we could use, and I kind of jokingly Captain Accelerated, but if there was any easy way, could we get over to Power BI and build out that dashboard in Power BI, knowing that we've collected the data, we bursted the data, we've got the data already structured from building our charts. And I don't know how long did it take you to come back and say, sure, I can do that.
And not long. I mean, once you have your data organized and sorted out, it's very easy to make that same dashboard into Power BI.
So, Jared, when you say it didn't take a lot of time, does that mean it only took a day or two to build out the same kind of dashboard with the slipers and slicers in Power BI?
No, even shorter than that, maybe like 2, maybe 3 hours. It's very easy.
Okay. So as you can see, going from Excel into Power BI, and then we're really showing the exact same dashboard here. So this, as much as it looks just like what we did, this is built out in Power BI. So another way that we could help you, and certainly if you haven't looked into it, you may want to consider using Power BI, which is fairly easy to work with, especially if you're pretty good with Excel. So that's just an example. And certainly if you have some of the Excel automation tools like we have here at PDS, we could help you get there much quicker if you're interested in learning more about that. So, to kind of summarize here at PDS, our goal really is to help organizations be successful with analytics, whether it's making Excel easier to work with, more visual and more powerful to communicate, or even here at PDS, if it's modeling data from your EHR into databases, whether you're using tools like Epic or Cerner or Allscripts or eClinicalWorks, we have a tremendous amount of experience taking that data and making it powerful and accessible. So whether you're writing reports, exploring detail, or trying to build visual dashboards, we're really good at helping you get there. And we'd love to talk with you further, whatever your healthcare reporting challenges might be.
For those who are interested as well in terms of making your Excel dashboards a little bit better, more visual, something that communicates a little bit better. We have a couple of other webinars that are available on our website. One is an additional 5 charts that we did like we did today to show you how to build those charts and where they might be applicable within your data sets or reporting that you're doing. Or if you just want to learn more about how to visually improve your dashboards and look more into dashboard design, both of those are available on our website, and we'd love to have you go out and take a look.
So this concludes our webinar today. We'd love to hear from you if you think we can help you. Appreciate you joining us today through this kind of fun journey on improving healthcare dashboards. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.